moment the millionaire said she needed a boyfriend to meet her parents, the cafe went silent. But not for the reason anyone expected. It was a man in the corner, a tired single father with a sleeping child in his arms, who quietly muttered that he wasn't sleeping on anyone's sofa. And somehow, that one stubborn sentence changed both their lives forever. If you believe in kindness and second chances, take a second right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Heartfelt Stories. Because sometimes, the most unexpected connections lead to the most beautiful endings. It was a bright afternoon, the kind where sunlight poured through glass windows and painted everything gold. But for Zara Qureshi, the world felt anything but warm. She sat stiffly in her designer suit, her untouched coffee growing cold, her mind racing with the ticking clock of expectations. Her parents were flying in that evening, and for the first time in her perfectly controlled, meticulously built life, she had no plan. At 32, she had built a business empire from nothing, turning late nights and sacrifices into a life most people only dreamed of. But none of it mattered to her parents, who measured success not in achievements, but in companionship. And Zara, despite everything she had no one. She had made the offer impulsively, almost desperately, to no one in particular. She needed someone to pretend, just for a few hours, someone presentable, someone convincing. But the people around her had either laughed awkwardly or avoided eye contact, except for him. Ayan Malik sat quietly in the corner, his worn shirt and tired eyes telling a story far heavier than Zara's polished exterior ever could. His daughter, barely 5, slept against his chest, her small fingers curled into his collar, as if afraid the world might take him away if she let go. Ayan wasn't supposed to be part of Zara's world. He didn't belong in places like this cafe, where people spoke in hushed tones about investments and vacations. He belonged to a different reality, one filled with hospital bills, school fees, and sleepless nights. But something about Zara's desperation felt familiar to him. Life had not been kind to Ayan. After losing his wife to illness, he had been left with child and a mountain of responsibilities. He had worked every job he could find, sacrificing comfort, pride, and rest just to make sure his daughter never felt the emptiness he carried. He had slept in uncomfortable places, accepted help he didn't want, and endured silent judgments from people who didn't understand. So when he heard Zara's offer, something inside him stirred, not greed, not curiosity, but a strange sense of recognition. He understood what it meant to need something you couldn't buy, but he also had his dignity. That was why, when he finally spoke, his voice was calm but firm, cutting through the air like a quiet truth. He made it clear that whatever arrangement this was, he would not compromise his self-respect. He would not be treated like an object, nor would he accept humiliation in exchange for money. He was willing to help, but only on terms that preserve his worth. Zara looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. Beneath the exhaustion and simple clothes, there was something steady about him, something unshaken. He wasn't intimidated by her wealth, nor impressed by it. And strangely, that made her trust him more than anyone else in the room. The agreement they reached was simple. He would accompany her for the evening, play the role convincingly, and in return, she would help him financially. Not as charity, but as a fair exchange. It was supposed to be straightforward, temporary, and emotionless. But life rarely follows such neat plans. As the day unfolded, the lines between pretense and reality began to blur. Zara found herself observing Ayan in ways she hadn't expected. The way he gently adjusted his daughter's position so she wouldn't wake. The way he spoke to her when she stirred, his voice soft and full of warmth. The way he carried himself, not with arrogance, but with quiet strength. It was unfamiliar to Zara, who had spent years surrounded by people who either wanted something from her or tried to impress her. Ayan didn't either. He didn't ask questions about her wealth, didn't flatter her, didn't try to fit into her world. He simply existed, unapologetically himself. And for the first time in a long time, Zara felt something shift inside her. The evening arrived quickly, and with it came the test. Zara's parents were everything she feared, sharp-eyed, traditional, and impossible to please. They scrutinized every detail, every gesture, every word. They had built their expectations over years, and they were not easily convinced. At first, Zara played her part perfectly. She smiled. She spoke confidently. She maintained illusion. But it was Ion who surprised everyone. Without trying too hard, without rehearsed lines, he brought a sense of authenticity that no performance could replicate. He didn't try to impress. He simply showed up as himself. And somehow that was enough. Zara's parents noticed. They saw the way he treated Zara, not as a wealthy woman, but as a person. They saw the way he spoke, respectful but not submissive. And most importantly, they saw the child, whose presence added a layer of reality no stage relationship could fake. But beneath the surface, tension brewed. Zara's carefully constructed life was built on control, and Ion's presence challenged that. He represented unpredictability, emotion, and vulnerability, things she had spent years avoiding. And Ion, in turn, felt the weight of stepping into a world that was never meant for him. He knew this was temporary, that once the night ended, their paths would diverge again. Yet, neither of them could ignore the connection forming between them. As the hours passed, moments of silence spoke louder than words. Shared glances, unspoken understanding, and a growing sense that this arrangement was no longer just an arrangement. It was something deeper, something neither of them had planned for. But reality has a way of reminding people where they stand. When the evening ended, Zara returned to her empty apartment. The silence louder than ever. The performance was over. Her parents were satisfied, for now, and Ion had kept his part of the deal. Yet, something felt incomplete. She realized that for all her success, all her achievements, she had built a life that lacked warmth, a life without genuine connection. And in just one day, Ion had shown her what she'd been missing. Meanwhile, Ion walked back to his small home, his daughter's hand in his. He should have felt relief, knowing he had secured financial help that would ease his burdens. But instead, he felt a strange emptiness, because for a brief moment, he had stepped into a different life, a life where he wasn't just surviving, but living. And letting go of that feeling was harder than he expected. Days passed, but neither of them could forget. Zara found herself drawn to simplicity Ion represented, while Ion struggled to return to a life that now felt even heavier in comparison. The memory of that day lingered, refusing to fade, and eventually it led them back to each other, not as a transaction, not as a pretense, but as two people willing to take a risk. Their journey wasn't easy. Differences in lifestyle expectations and past wounds created challenges that tested them at every step. Zara had to learn to let go of control, to embrace uncertainty and open her heart. Ion had confronted his fears of not belonging, of not being enough. But through it all, they found something worth fighting for. A connection built not on wealth and necessity, but on understanding, respect, and genuine care. And in the end, it wasn't about a millionaire needing a boyfriend, or a single dad refusing to sleep on a sofa. It was about two broken pieces, finding a way to fit together. Before we reach the end, take a moment to comment. Have you ever met someone unexpectedly who changed your life forever? Because stories like this remind us that sometimes the people we least expect can become the ones we need the most. As time passed, Zara's world transformed. Not because she lost her success, but because she finally found balance. And Ion's life became lighter. Not because his struggles disappeared, but because he no longer faced them alone. Their story didn't erase the past, but it gave them a future. A future filled with laughter, shared mornings, and a sense of belonging neither had known before. And as the sun rose on another ordinary day, it carried with it the quiet promise of something extraordinary, the kind of love that begins in the most unexpected ways. If this story touched your heart even a little, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Heartfelt Stories. Because sometimes the simplest acts of kindness can lead to the most powerful transformations.